Ah, where'd it go? Give me a moment, everyone. Oh, here we are. Okay, phew. Found you all. We are live on YouTube.
Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome back after, I hope, what was a wonderful summer. It is September 4th, and this is a meeting of the Zoning and Land Use Committee. I would first like to welcome one of our new committee members, Ralph Parmasino, who's here in the office with us.
Hi, Ralph.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I would also like to welcome Lucy Levine from the Historic Districts Council and our applicant this evening, who is Lindsay Peterson. So we have two items on the agenda. The first is an application under consideration at the New York State Board for Historic Preservation for Louise Terrace, Colonial Road Historic District, to be listed in the National Register of Historic Places. And the applicant this evening is Lindsay Peterson, and she will be presenting the application to the committee. Lindsay, would you like to begin?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for having me tonight. I'm very excited to share this with all of you. It's been a labor of love. So my name is Lindsay Peterson. I'm the sponsor of this National Register nomination. And here I'm going to pull this up so I can start talking to it. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So just a little bit about me. I'm a relative newcomer to Bay Ridge. I only moved here 2 years ago to Louise Terrace. So this is where I live. I'm at 7007 Louise Terrace, and I live here with my husband and 2 kids. And I also work as a preservation consultant, a historic architectural historian. So this was sort of work I was going to end up doing anyway, just to satisfy my own curiosity. So I thought I would put it all down in words and get the benefits of being listed on the National Register. So this presentation is just like a little rundown of the history of the district, sort of how it fits into the National Register criteria. So how I, worked it into how they look at these things. And then also a little quick recap of where we stand in the process. So for those who may not be familiar with Louise Terrace, I just included this to situate everyone. So this is the north side of Bay Ridge. There's Owl's Head Park and the pier. And here's Colonial Road running north-south. And here's the district outlined in red. And it's located between McKay Place and 70th Street. And here's Colonial Road, and here's Louise Terrace. And so this boundary was drawn based on the district's history, which was pretty simple because all of these houses were built at the same time for the same developer. They were built in 1927 for a local developer named Adam Schumann, and I'll talk a little bit about him. And in total, there's 39 contributing resources. So that includes 33 houses and 6 garages, because 6 of the garages are separate structures from the houses. The rest of the houses have garages in their basement levels off of these shared alleys. And here's just a few photos of what it looks like right now. And I'll talk about this more too, but they were all designed by a Swedish-born architect named Olof B. Almgren in the Tudor Revival style, in this very somewhat unique terrace style planning. So quick rundown of the history. I'm sure lots of you know a lot of this already, but it's still pretty fun and interesting regardless. During the second half of the 19th century, Bay Ridge was populated by a number of country estates. So this was the era before trains reached Bay Ridge, and it was really sought out for this bucolic, isolated character. One of those estates was the Joseph A. Perry estate. He was the comptroller of Greenwood Cemetery, and he built a house here in 1851. And so this is the star sort of represents where the historic district is located. And here's a map from 1905 showing the outline of the historic district. Here is Joseph Perry's house. And so this was his land. Down here, this was land that had been owned by John Mackay, an Irish immigrant who had made his fortune in gold mining. And he had started to sell off those parcels, and there was a number of houses which still exist, or many of them do, to the I have to think about my directions, west. And I noticed serendipitously, somebody on Facebook posted this photo the other day, which is of the Perry Mansion. So this is a view of this house, which probably was accessed more from the Ridge Boulevard side, but just kind of interesting to see it there. So the promise of the subway in the early 20th century dramatically changed Bay Ridge. And the owners of these countries' estates began to sell the properties to developers who were anxious to develop the land. The 4th Avenue subway was developed by the Brooklyn Rapid Transit Company and reached 86th Street by 1916. And these are just some images of, the massive amount of development that was happening around that transit development. So by the 1920s, one of the few estates that still remained intact was the Joseph A. Perry estate. And so he was long dead, but his estate sold it off in 1922, who began to fill it with row houses and apartment buildings. And this is from Scientific American. This is some photos of his house, which had to be moved across 71st Street. And then it was moved a second time before being demolished by the end of the 1920s. So here's a map from 1926. So this is the year before the development was built. And you can just see how all of these new tracts of row houses quickly filled in all the land. So Ridgecrest Terrace, Perry Terrace, and all these houses along Bay Ridge Ave and 70th Street. Around 1926, a developer named Adam Schumann bought this particular parcel. He was a German immigrant who had started an ice business in the 1880s, and he built a whole empire. He sold it around World War I and then got into real estate with his son-in-law. And so this was his second project. He had one other project in Bay Ridge, which I can't quite remember off the top of my head which street it was on, but it was freestanding houses rather than these attached houses. And so he hired Olof B. Almgren, this Swedish architect who had immigrated to the neighborhood in 1902 and had worked as a draftsman in the local E.W. Bliss company before he started his own practice. And so together they used this sort of neat real estate trick, which was instead of building the houses on facing the streets, they added a whole new street in here so that they could, or a terrace street, so that they could squish in quite a few more houses. And so I'm sure you're all familiar. There's lots of these throughout Bay Ridge. There's Madeline Court, Baycliff Terrace, Bliss Terrace, and I talk about a lot of those in the nomination. And so in the district, there's 11 houses on each block front, and they all have shared alleys and these interior garages, which is what you're sort of seeing in this map here. And the houses on the corners are slightly larger than the others, which with the detached garages. And so the architect gave the buildings this very unique, cohesive appearance. They were symmetrically arranged and all designed in the Tudor Revival style, which was very popular in the 1920s. Included just a few examples here. You know, they were looking to it as a status or a symbol of wealth and status. The British aristocracy or the banker houses in the suburbs, like this one in Scarsdale. And it eventually spread until it was all over Brooklyn. And so the Tudor Revival style is brick cladding, half timbering, front-facing gables, pitched slate roofs. And so the development was completed in 1927, and it was named after Schumann's daughter, Louise Schumann McCormick. And the original occupants were roughly split between American-born and foreign-born families. Many of the foreign-born families were from Scandinavian countries such as Sweden, Norway, Finland, Denmark, and many of them actually worked in the maritime industry, which was very interesting. This article is fascinating because by 1933, the residents had realized that somehow the city had actually named the street Elvira Court in the city maps. But even though there was a dedication in 1927 calling it Louise Terrace, and so their mail wasn't getting to them, everyone was very confused, and it took them, I think, until 1940 to get it officially changed back to Louise Terrace. And so here's just what a full block looked like in 1940. And what you can see is that they're symmetrical. So each building in the nomination is given or a letter and a type. And those 4 types are the corner, which has multiple gables and an arched entrance. Type B is second from the corner. The middle, there's a few of these, but it has, they're each differentiated by the types of window openings and whether or not they have a gable. Type C is the jerkin head gable, my favorite term. This is actually one of the ones I live in. And type D has this pitched gable, and these two also have all the half timbering details. So elements that contribute to the architectural significance of these are all of these various features, these front-facing gables, these projecting chimneys, the brick cladding, the half timbering, et cetera, et cetera. And at the rear, the National Park Service, they care about what it looks like on all facades. So the rears are just more utilitarian. They have the garage entrances, single window openings, and they all share alleys, which is also reflective of the rise of the automobile in the 1920s and the fact that people buying these houses actually had cars. And so these are a few comparisons that SHPO actually put together, which just go to show, because one thing you're doing when you're listing buildings is sort of making a case that they retain integrity. And I think these comparisons show that, all these, the form, the materials, the style, all these elements still remain here in these buildings. So that's B. They're not all one-to-ones, but still pretty helpful. There have been typical changes made to these houses, but as long as you can sort of enumerate the types of changes and the effect that they've had, and here the effect is pretty negligible overall, it's usually okay. Okay, and then type D. And then, just for listing on the National Register, there's a number of different areas that the buildings have to be significant under. That's events or patterns of history, associations with significant people, architecture, or archaeology. I don't think I've ever actually got to use this. So I do this, sorry, I should have said, I write a lot of these for work. So, but I've never got to do significant person archaeology. It's almost always architecture and the significant events or patterns of history. And so in this case, I am nominating it as being significant in events or patterns of the history. So it's, really the development of Bay Ridge and the community planning aspect of this, the terrace development, and then also for its architecture. So the Tudor revival style, also the terrace planning sort of applies to this as well, but you sort of build a case for it. And then I think this is basically it. Just a recap of, what it took to get here. I actually met with SHPO last August to, pitch the idea of this district to them. So I had already done a little bit of research and they were supportive. And so I wrote the nomination. I think I finished it in February. And then I met with my neighbors first in May, and SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office, sent out notification letters in July. I tried to have a second meeting with my neighbors, but nobody actually came. So I guess that means we're all good. And then, as you know, the state review board meeting is next week. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. And I think this is an adapted presentation of what I showed my neighbors. So I think I had a Q&A here for them to, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might all have about this.
Thank you. That was really wonderful.
That was great.
It was. Does the committee have any questions? Anne, your hand is up.
Lindsay, I'm a little confused. I haven't really dealt with National Register projects. So you say it funnels through the state first?
Yes. So the way it works is before you're listed on the National Register, you work with your state historic preservation office to put the nomination together. And then it is heard by a body called the State Review Board, at which point, once they approve it, it's listed on the state register of historic places. And then it goes down to the National Park Service, who officially lists it on the National Register of Historic Places. It's definitely a multi-step process. Yeah.
One more question. In one of the photos, I could see that there was a significant change to the brick porch in the front of the house, as if perhaps they established a cellar entrance from the street side. I was just wondering how many of the houses have been as significantly altered.
I'm not sure.
Oh, it's
the ones
further
on
back.
the corners.
It's further back.
Okay.
Again, back there. One,
This
yeah.
one.
The one in the
this,
back in the middle.
this,
Yes.
That is actually a garbage nook.
Really?
It's not an entrance. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So the one unique thing about our street, and we've actually emailed Justin Brandon about this, is that our sidewalks are super, super narrow. And so we're very concerned about the new trash can situation. But yeah, that's a trash nook, not an entrance.
The bullet box, the single window openings house without gables, was blocking the sidewalk. So first glance, it seemed like the top of a cellar door, but I can see. Thank you.
But even still, yeah, I would just say that even if it had been an entrance, they accept that, changes have been made over time, and maybe slightly less so for residential than commercial. But, historic districts are really about like the feeling of the collection of buildings together.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I have a question.
Hold on. Steve had his hand up.
Okay,
Yeah, you got-
sorry.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm a little bit confused. These homes look very similar to a home my aunt lived in Middle Village, Queens. I'm just wondering, are they unique to this area? If they're not completely unique to this area, then what would make that something that would be historically valuable?
So these types of row houses, yes, exist across the outer boroughs, I would say. So you see a lot of these in South Brooklyn and in Queens. And the thing about listing on the National Register is it doesn't have to be the most unique or architecturally significant thing. All that you're required to do is show that the buildings reflect some trend or event in history. In this case, it's, how did these get here in the first place? And that's the whole history of Bay Ridge, of why they're here.
But just if I can, I understand that. My point is that if we have that there, I live in Bay Ridge, and in row houses that are quite interesting. Oddly enough, there's behind my house on 79th Street, which is just another street in Bay Ridge. There's a Louise Terrace behind it that there was not a Louise Terrace. There was a a street that went directly from there down to the pier. Okay, and that was eliminated at some point, so I could come up with some historic reason why that should be named on the National Register. Maybe it should be, but I'm saying to you, like, what are the consequences of this? If it's on the National Register, does that mean that it can't be developed over? What is the point of doing it? That's what I'm asking.
Okay, happy to explain that. So being on the National Register of Historic Places is honorary. It is 100% different from local designation by the New York City Landmarks Commission. So what this does, and the reason to do it, is that being listed as a historic district on the National Register makes me and my neighbors, we can now apply for historic tax credits for work on our houses. And that's a 20% tax credit off of eligible work that we do on our houses, interior and exterior.
So there's an economic advantage to it.
There is an economic advantage. I mean, it's a nice thing to be able to say about our street and our houses, but there is 100% an economic reason to do this.
But the homeowners would be able to alter their homes, the facades?
Yes, the National Register does not prevent people from changing their houses. What it's doing, though, is incentivizing them that if they would like a significant chunk of money back, is to do it to the Secretary of Interior standards, which will maintain all of these character defining features that I've outlined here. Mm-hmm. So that, and that's the point of the nomination, is that I'm identifying what is it that's important about this district and these houses and what's worth, maintaining. And they would use that in any application I put forward to make a change, to, approve or deny it.
Thank you for clarifying that. Carmela?
Does everyone in the district agree with this?
I have knocked on doors and done these informational meetings, and I am not aware of any opposition. So everybody has a chance to object to the listing. They have to notarize a letter and send it back to the State Historic Preservation Office to SHPO, and I've been told that nobody has done that. So I'm taking that to mean that everybody is.
They received a letter from the state.
Mm-hmm.
Then
Yes.
if they don't, oh, gotcha, they got an opt-out. No problem. Sounds good to me.
I just want to share that we did receive 2 calls from residents who were supportive, who received the letter and saw the notice on the community board website and think it's great. And it's a positive to preserve some of the features that they feel make their block very unique and special in Bay Ridge.
Any other questions from the committee? Oh, Ralph?
Yeah, first of all, that is a beautiful presentation. Really, really very well done. Really great. And it's a little piece of England right here in Bay Ridge, which is kind of nice. So just following up on what Steve was asking. So do you think all of the neighbors know that there's this tax credit available to them if this goes through?
Yeah. So when I made flyers, I attached to the flyer all of the financial incentives that went along with this listing. And then when the state sent their notification letter, they also included all of the same documentation about the financial incentives. So I hope that most of them are aware of it now.
Yeah, money usually talks, right?
Yeah.
The other question I had is, you're saying that people could get the tax incentive if they follow the guidelines, the national guidelines, or federal guidelines. So if they don't want that, they could make significant changes if they don't want to follow the guideline?
They could, yeah. People are still free to make changes, right? They don't have to go through this process, but the idea is that there's a benefit to doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Steve, do you have another question or is your hand just still up?
No, I just always keep my hand up. That's
Okay.
Are there
Sorry.
other questions?
I can stop sharing here.
Oh, oh,
Jean Marie.
Hi.
Hey, so as you were giving your presentation, and I agree, it was very informative. We're hearing names as you're telling us, and it's like you're mentioning the Perry family. And it's like, oh yeah, Perry Terrace, and it's like, oh yeah, McKay Place, that must be it. And so we knew that Louise would be somebody's daughter or wife, but now we have to consider who Elvira really was. In this.
Right, where does that name even come from?
Right. Where she came from, but it was very interesting, and I thank you for sharing that. As we look around our neighborhood, as Steve was pointing out, we have so many places all around the city, just like his aunt in Queens. But, there's other little blocks like this tucked in and around our neighborhood. And this is something that perhaps other residents and other groups might find something worth pursuing. I was not aware of what the financial incentive is for the homeowners. And, I appreciate you sharing all that you did and having such a well-informed presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. I will add one quick caveat onto the financial incentives, which is that you need two things. One is to be listed, but you also have to be, because this is a state credit, the homeowners is a state credit, but you have to be in an eligible census district. So it's not that I think not all of Bay Ridge would be eligible. It's going to matter which. And so my census district currently is eligible and hopefully will remain eligible. But
and then what brings that eligibility?
Sorry?
What renders it eligible, the eligibility?
I think it's based on the income in the district. Don't 100% quote me on how they do this. I just check a map and it tells me whether it's a yes or a no. But it's really kind of inexplicable because you can look in Manhattan and there's zones that don't make any sense that are eligible, and I don't totally get how it works or how to figure out if we'll become ineligible in the future. So I'm gonna try and do my project sooner rather than later.
Thank you. Anne and then Barbara. You're on.
Lindsay, I after you are awarded the status with the National Register, do you plan on having any kind of even unofficial community group for the people that live on Louise Terrace and Colonial Road? Because people have very short memories, and a year from now, someone may forget that they have tax credits and already, place their order for vinyl siding or whatever.
Yeah,
but just to keep it in people's mind.
Yes, I've had the same thought, mostly because I'm also happy to assist all my neighbors in this process. If they need help, I'm, 100% willing to help them apply and, work with their materials. But we are actually having our first annual block party this Saturday, which I think also came before
Community Board 10, yes.
Yes. So I'm thinking I'll maybe bring a list for people to write their emails and can start something or a Facebook group. But I think you're totally right. It's a great idea. And I don't want people to forget. I want them to take advantage.
Thank you and good luck with that.
Thank you.
Barbara?
Well, this is a great idea. Were you thinking of somewhere down the road publishing an article or having a pamphlet that tells folks the history, how this came about, and why it's significant? In other words, some written thing?
I mean, there's already so many great Bay Ridge blogs, some of which were, very helpful for me in sort of figuring some of this out. I'm not really sure I have a method in which to
do this.
Yeah. But I would, always consider it. I'm happy to share the info.
And also, it would be good for school groups when they take the little trips in the neighborhood. Um, for the children and the teachers could visit this.
Yeah.
And there's a whole lot of significance and history behind it. So it's great.
Oh, yeah. I mean, many, like 20 years ago, worked at a nonprofit where I gave architectural tours for children. And it's so much fun. And my kids go to a PS 102. So I've thought about trying to, I'm a little short on like extra time for these things. But it would be fun to do something like that again.
Oh, good.
And Stephanie, if I may, I just wanted to add, I don't want to take Thadia Delancey, who's also on this call, who's the next presentation, but one of the recommendations and thoughts we had as a board was to create a page or a section on our website devoted to historic districts within Community District 10, a little bit of history there, some of our landmarks, moving ahead as a future project for our next intern, moving forward, because we're really starting to delve into the reconnaissance report in 2014 that was prepared, as well as taking a proactive look at both potential future, state historic district sites, as well as landmarking. And that's a conversation we're going to begin in the next portion of this meeting. So I do think, coming from the ground, from you and from neighbors and keeping that going, but we'd also like to take a part in that as well, I think.
Doris, and then we'll wrap up this portion of the agenda. We still have a motion.
Lindsay, I want to thank you for an incredible presentation. But you mentioned that there's a map that shows that your area is eligible for these tax credits. Could you forward that to the community board? So that, because there are many other areas, especially in the 90s, with a similar architecture. And if we can see if this could help them.
Yeah, I'm happy. It's a GIS map through the state, but I'm happy to take a few screen grabs and shoot that over.
Because it saves Josephine doing the work.
Thank you, Doris.
So on September 12th, Lindsay, you'll be there at the New York State Board for
I'll be there virtually.
Okay. That's when Lindsay's application goes before the board for nomination to the National and State Registers. So we, as a committee, and board are able to provide comment in support of Lindsay's application. So would anyone like to make a motion to do so?
So moved.
Seconded.
And Barbara seconded?
Yes.
Any discussion? No?
No discussion. Okay, motion carries.
Very good. Thank you.
And Lindsay, that was a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much for doing that for us.
Thank you for having me. I might stick around to hear what you're talking about in the next
Lindsay,
section.
before you go, I just want to add to you that we are also looking at operational concerns regarding the containerization Department of Sanitation. And I'll be sure to email you that meeting if you'd like to join us, but I will certainly automatically add it to the list of concerns that Board 10 will present to the department later this month. So thank you.
Okay. Yeah, no, that would be great.
Now I'd like to welcome Thadia Delancey. She is one of CB10's former interns, and she has been working on some of these sites. She's reviewed the reconnaissance survey of historic resources, which I don't know if you remember from several meetings ago, before sitting with you. This survey had been prepared through the Historic District Council in 2014, so 10 years later. Thadia has been looking for this very extensive survey.
So back in March, I put some slides together, but maybe I'll just share with the board committee members just to remind you that in March, we discussed the reconnaissance report that was put together back in 2014, and many on the committee thought it would be a great idea to delve into the report because there were so many great locations and begin to talk about developing Community Board 10's priority list, potentially of either historic sites or future landmarking, and really begin talking about creating an internal priority list, as some other boards in the city have done. And the first step of that process was, we were fortunate enough to have an intern this summer from the Summer Youth Employment Program, Thadia Delancey, who took on this project, and she opened up the 2014 Great Reconnaissance Report and began to do some research. And she picked a few locations that she thought would be, great for the board to begin this priority list consideration by doing deeper research. And she met with Henry Stewart from Community Board 10, who's on Bay Ridge Historical Society, as well as Lucy Levine from the Historic Districts Council, Victoria Hoffmo, the Bay Ridge Conservancy. And I'm so happy that although her internship ended in mid-August, that she is here tonight to share her research, and then we could talk about next steps. So on behalf of all of us, Thadia, thank you for being here. We look forward to your presentation.
Thank you. And can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Thank you. I'm glad I took time to do this with all of you. I'm going to share my screen right now. Okay, can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay. So good evening, everyone. I just wanted to present potential landmark and historic preservation sites on behalf of Community Board 10. I wanted to start off with acknowledgements. I'd like to thank Josephine Beckman for giving me this opportunity. It was an amazing project that I would like to work on in the future and think of other places in Brooklyn. And also, I'd like to thank Henry Stewart, Kelly Carroll, the Audemars librarians, and Pugh Duvalian and the Historic District Council, just for the overall advice, resources needed for my research. Designating landmarks and the National Register is important to preserve cultural heritage of New York City, especially here over there in Bay Ridge. It's about protecting significant areas and the possibility to be used for recreational use that benefits the community if it becomes a on the National Register. The reconnaissance survey conducted by the lead investigator, Duvalian, is to place them in a larger context of the local, regional, and historic narrative. And it included Bay Ridge history, like from the colonial era to the 1920s construction boom, all the way into the post-war period. And also just to observe the architectural summary of these styles and designs, and even to include, try to associate the lives of those that live in Bay Ridge and why they're so significant. And also the list has 6 historic districts and 19 individual nominations. So I broke it down into these. The list I have here are from the 2014 reconnaissance survey and from my own findings. So in order to conduct this research, these potential landmark sites are based on my request for evaluation. So like letter forms for each individual site, and they explain why they're very significant. So with the help of Henry Stewart, I present the Barclay Cemetery on southwest corner of McKay Place and Narrows Avenue. So Bay Ridge Barclay Cemetery was established in 1725 by the New Utrecht original settlement member Willem Harmus van Barclay of Bay Ridge. Despite its American Revolutionary past of Van Barclay's burying his sons, the geographical shortage of burial lands caused rumors that there used to be more pioneers that reside in the plot of land. So whether it was, I'm sorry. Oh, um, besides it being whether it was empty graves or just taking away the tombstones, there has been 4 confirmed burials in the cemetery, mostly all from the Barclay family lineage. There has been various owners of the burial plot, from Barclay family ties to the Daughters of the American Revolution in 1923, who would later reclaim the plot of land. And here are newspaper clippings from the newsstand from the 1920s of their contribution. Ownership had then become community-based, with the Veterans of Foreign Wars, or the VFW post, maintaining the plot of land from the 1930s into the 1960s, with recreational use of being a place of commemoration for patriotism and honoring blue-blooded fallen soldiers. Here, as the these photos are very recent. Josephine and I and other interns went here to just see the land at face value, and it's in great condition. Also, as the Daughters of the American Revolution and the Veterans of Foreign Wars advanced the cemetery without any disturbance to the site, community members protested with the city to preserve these burial site as a public ground. And it is now, present day, it's now owned by the Severian School, which you can see in the background here. And the residents and the students have cared for the cemetery and wanted to focus on its beauty while highlighting its patriotic significance. Here, I'd like to thank Pastor Bob for giving us a tour of the church, and also just the assistance of his overall history. This church is on the National Register, but there are no further plans to landmark it. So before it was named the Union Church of Bay Ridge Presbyterian in 1918, the Bay Ridge Reformed Dutch Church was built between 1896 to 1897 as an arts and crafts style architecture with Gothic revival influence. The Reformed Church was organized by the Buildings Committee Chairman, F.S. Sanford, and because of the Van Brunt's past farm lines in Old Bay Ridge, the plot of land was given by Jack Van Brunt, a member of the building committee. Here's just overall pictures from the 1950s of what it used to look like, and the bell in the middle is from 1896, built by McKay. And on the right is just the interior of the bell tower. So it has a lot of maintenance done to it. Then here's my favorite part, the stained glass windows within the church. So the stained glass artwork was made by Louis Comfort Tiffany, and also another prominent member named Otto Heinecke. These glasses are memorial windows that use religious icons or biblical references. And many prominent members of Bay Ridge would pay to have a memorial window. So, for example, on the left here is Jesus' resurrection, and this was in memory of Van Brunt's, the Van Brunts. Yeah. Here's just an image of the church in 1897 and a little background information on the church. And then this is like the interior of the church. Inside, they have a dumbwaiter, which I thought was pretty awesome. Here, so I wanted to focus on like the unionization of these of two different churches. So after being built, there were now two churches along Ridge Boulevard. This one on 80th Street and the one in the left-hand corner, 81st Street. So they're just within blocks of each other. And the relations between the initial pastors were amicable, and they shared the same vision for Bay Ridge church loving community that was growing from a Dutch colony to a cosmopolitan city. So the two congregations decided to merge in 1918 and now call themselves the Union Church of Bay Ridge Presbyterian. Now here is the St. Anselm Church. It's on 82nd Street, so not far from the Community Board 10 headquarters. So St. Anselm Parish was formally established in 1922 by their Archbishop Thomas E. Mawley, and had an extensive dedication history leading to the church's final form in 1954. So within the years of pastors assigned to St. Anselm, there was like this very growing room for improvement and maintaining their high standards of pastoral efficiency by actively engaging in new additions to this parish, which it took 32 years to become what it is today. And here I just wanted to include photos that I've gathered from the 1950s of its construction from start to finish. And they were constantly building this church from World War I to World War II and into the Great Depression until finally being completed in 1954. And it has an Art Deco style that was heavily used by the architect Henry V. Murphy, who also designed the Severian High School in 1957. On your left is the bell tower, and even though it's hidden by trees almost, they have singing angels, which I thought was nice, and it really highlights the Art Deco feature. And then the front window, it represents a lot of religious icons from the Star of David to other Christian ties. And they also have stained glass windows and more statues here on the outer side. And this is present day, what it looks like right now. Now I would like to go into the High School of Telecommunications on 67th Street. It was previously known as Bay Ridge, and it has a very interesting history that focuses on like the intersection of gender and education. It has a Jacobean revival style to it that many New York public schools have today. So initially the school was co-educational, but then the Board of Education in 1914 decided to make it an all-girls school. And from 1915 to 1960s. The architect for this building was CB Snyder, who also made a lot of who made a lot of other New York City public schools, and he was the superintendent of school buildings for the New York City Board of Education from 1891 to 1923. So for here, I thought it would be important to discuss women's legacies and their contribution to the school. So here I have, I physically held their yearbooks from 1936, and they had a lot of interesting photographs and just overall imagery of what what women during that time were expected to be, because this was like before the time of the feminist movement, and it was very noteworthy of like how these students at Bay Ridge High School made use of the resources available to them, including they also had like courses on domestic living, home science, and the arts, whether to pursue their own independence or just to take on the traditional role of being a dedicated housewife. And the woman here on the right, her name is Kate E. Turner. She made history by being the first woman appointed as principal in Brooklyn for the Bay Ridge High School. And here are more photos of yearbook signatures. They're out just to recognize their legacy and contributions made to this high school. Now, here is 131 on 76th Street. It's a neoclassical style home. It's between Ridge Boulevard and Colonial Road, and it rests on a hill where you would see those steep streets. So the original home, it was built for William H. Thomas towards the end of the Civil War, so 1865. So there was a question about its originality and where did it go? Like, did it its migration? So on the left side, in 1905, here circled, the house was present in lot 5938. But then from 1907 to 1912, the house was no longer there in this block, and it might have migrated towards 76th Street as it is today. So yeah, the house was either moved or they demolished it and just built a similar yet different home. I wanted to focus on the influential residents that lived in the house. So Charles S. Basset lived at 131 in 1911. He was an active member of the GOP in Bay Ridge, and he played a pivotal role in civic affairs for many years and was instrumental in funding the 30th Ward Improvement Association. And in 1922, Basset sold his home to George Andrews, who lived here in the Chateau House 122. sorry. And he was also a prominent member who dealt in real estate. This is a aerial view of the home as you see the Sept Street. And another influential resident that lived here during the 50s, her name was Adele Maksoud. She played a pivotal role in the Syrian Junior League. She was president. And it was an all women's club organized during the progressive era that held exclusive social events to raise funds for hospitals, cancer care treatments, and other charitable causes. Here is a firehouse in Bay Ridge, a Firehouse Engine Company 242 on Fifth Avenue. They're coined as the Guardians of the Narrows, and it has a neoclassical style. I would have liked to have gained more information on the firehouses, but I was able to get just scratch the surface on the firehouses. And here, these firehouses were considered the standard, a model firehouse. And it was placed here. Sorry. The new firehouses were designed to be made of reinforced concrete with metal doors and trimmings, and the design focused on its simplicity, dignity, and lack of unnecessary embellishments, which would be seen all over other New York fire departments. Here, I included a firehouse from Dyker Heights, engine company 284 on 70th Street. And this one is coined the Castle on the Hill, built in 1912. Yeah, sorry. And then here, just to remind everyone about 74th Street District and its significance and how long it has been in Bay Ridge community. Here's a list of the recommended list from 2014 made by Duvalion, whether it was historic districts or religious standalones or even academic institutions. Some of these were already declassified, and they were no longer labeled to be, they were no longer able to become landmarked. And here is the list 10 years later, made by me and Josephine Beckman, that represent historic districts such as Louise Terrace that Lindsay had spoken of, and other just other new additions to what could be landmarked or put on the National Register. And I also added a list for Dyker Heights. And that's it.
Oh, thank you. That was great.
That was a lot of work.
Thank you.
A lot of research.
Great job. Thanks.
This was
Wonderful
amazing.
job.
Really great.
I know
Thank you.
Down all of the original recommendations to those. It was about 7 or 8, correct?
Yes.
Does the committee have any questions for Dadia right now?
I have a question related to this topic for Josephine quickly, if I may.
Sure.
Josephine, I know that the block on 76th Street between 6th and 7th was denied landmark status by the city.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know about that or why it was denied?
I don't know the details. I know that both 76th Street and 74th Street applications were not supported by LPC. I think in part was related to, they have very extensive criteria and but I don't know the specifics, but I could certainly find out. And I think that's a good example of really delving back into some of the locations that have applied in the past, like Senator Street, and have it move forward, 74th Street, and maybe having a conversation with LPC, and gaining a better understanding, I think could be part of this effort that we're looking to embark upon as a committee.
Right, and I also wonder whether, based on Lindsay's good work and presentation tonight, whether some of those really very deserving blocks should attempt the National Register.
Yes. Great point. Yeah, and I do think that's a conversation we had over the summer, right, Thadia, that some may not be interested in landmarking, but could be certainly eligible for the National Registry and starting out with state SHPO. So I do think that's definitely a great idea.
Thank you. And Thadia, one more question. Could you return to the Diker Heights sheet? I didn't get a look at it fast enough to take a picture of it.
Okay.
Is it trouble for you to get back to that place or?
No, it's right here.
Great. Thanks very much.
Mm-hmm. Barbara?
I was just mentioned to Thadia that I taught in Bay Ridge High School for 20 years. Just I don't want any more material on it. We could speak, but you did a fantastic job.
Thank you. I for this project, I would have liked to have met more people to gather more information, because it's kind of like grassroots community based,
Right.
like there's more people that lived at Bay Ridge forever. I would have liked to add more, but I'm very grateful that Josephine was able to bring Henry Stewart and Lucy and other members of Bay Ridge to talk with me.
Excellent job.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Doris?
Yes, I'm just a bit of a comment on Anne's. I get emails from the Greenwich Village Historic Society, and they just sent me an email in the last day or two. New study documents dramatic citywide drop in landmark designations under Mayor Adams and real estate industry influence. So there's a lot of politics. It's not aesthetics, it's not history, it's politics.
What everything boils down to, right?
Right. But Thadia, you did an incredible job.
Thank you. And when I first started out, I saw a lot of interesting buildings I wanted to do research on, but I come to find out that there's certain buildings like churches. Churches are very hard to put on the National Register or even landmark. So the low-hanging fruit were the schools or even the firehouses. So that's why I also wanted to include it, Diker Heights, into the conversation.
Great. I believe that's something that colleague Carol had echoed several months ago.
Yeah.
During the March meeting.
Yeah. That the public edifices or the public sites would perhaps be easier to landmark, or at least to begin with RFEs.
Yeah. So maybe, Stephanie, I could share my screen really quickly, and we did a little bit of the background before. We talked about the differences between the historic district and we've talked about, maybe creating a working group, reviewing the research that Thaddeus has presented here, really work on developing a priority list and some recommendations that we could do outreach to, whether it's homeowners or it's, talk about some of the municipal buildings that we have, and begin to build, providing this information on our website of, the reconnaissance report and some of the deeper research that Thaddeus completed this summer. She also drafted some RFEs. So if there is an interest and, how we can move forward, I'm glad that Lucy Levine is here from the Historic Districts Council. They've been really helpful in guiding us. And, we, as a follow-up to our meeting in March, we know that this is a process that other boards in the city have gone through. So we look forward to, beginning this project really, and trying to be more proactive about the conversation instead of reactive when we're about to perhaps lose a treasured location in the district.
Any thoughts on steps forward? Is this a working group situation where we could maybe meet in between other meetings? I mean, we have City of Yes, so we have plenty of time. Or I don't know, it's subcommittee sometimes exploded, but I think
Working group.
I think is a better approach. Doris?
I'm happy to join the working group.
Me as well. Count me in.
Okay.
All right, good.
All right. Ralph?
And Ralph? Yeah, I would join the working group. That would be great. But I did have a question just on overall on the presentation. Will these being researched for local New York City landmarks, nominations, and National Register, or just one?
Both, yeah. You know what, Thaddeus, we embarked on this really from the March meeting to delve into greater detail of the reconnaissance report. And I think what we learned was that there is a really high threshold for landmarking, but certainly some of these may be eligible for National Registry. And we wanted to get that research information together before we started the working group so that we could do outreach to see if there's an interest, both, in the case of the private homeowner or the some of the houses of worship. The Union Church is already on the National Registry. St. Anselm's may consider it. But what we did realize, and Thaddeus, I don't want to speak for you in going through this, is that it's wonderful to recognize and know the history. And I was so excited each week, I mean, really for 6 weeks, we had Thaddeus in the office and she would be at the library and text me things that she uncovered. And I just didn't know. And I think it's so nice to share that with the community. And if that's what we achieve here is putting this value, this treasure trove of history and information, and keeping it available to residents and moving forward in a working group, Ralph, I think, those are noble goals, either the National Registry or the going through the landmark process.
And I think there's a lot of interest.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Great.
In the historical information,
Definitely.
Thaddeus, how many RFEs have you begun and completed?
I completed 7.
Oh, so
7?
You've already almost all of the ones that you presented this evening. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful.
What a great jump start.
Yeah. So there doesn't have to be discussion about whether or not we should do that because it's been done.
I think so. I think we'll be scheduling a working group down the road.
I'd like to join that also.
Okay, great.
Well, you're all invited.
All invited. All right. Everyone will get an email. So if you want to participate, that would be great. So yeah, I think that's about it. And Thaddeus, good luck with your studies.
Thank you.
Thank you again. 6 weeks went so quickly this summer.
It is good.
It was really a wonderful presentation, and we
Yes.
appreciated learning all about looking at places that we all know, but yet seeing them in a new light and learning new facts about them. And we thank you for that. It was much appreciated.
It was very informational and very well presented.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, thank you. I was really
Great.
glad to do this.
Thank you, Thaddy. I had the pleasure of having your presentation given to me in person, and I was just as happy to receive it again this evening. I learned something new tonight again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, committee, thank you very much for your time. And we will see you at the general board meeting on September 16th.
Very good.
Hope you all have a great
See y'all
week.
then. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You all, thank you.
Good night.
Good night.